Tell us about a no money down strategy. How does that work? And make it really simple, even for us, because
And I think this is where a lot of people get really attracted towards commercial as well, especially if they've read books on the subject from American authors or, good old Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? The idea of a no money down deal just sounds amazing.
It sounds the juiciest on the list. So we thought we'd just give us the basics, give us the basic rundown.
Because obviously for us in residential, it doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
So to get to learn about the unicorn deal is pretty exciting for me.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to do that. I mean, you can do it in residential, but it's much harder. Yeah, it's much harder doing residential. Whereas a commercial, I wouldn't say it's very easy, but there's more opportunities to do that. Okay, so in my ebook, Alan, which obviously you've looked at, you've read, there's half a dozen strategies, and one of them is no money down strategy. And basically, what it is literally no money down to own a property. How it works is like this, and this is not a strategy for someone who has a very low risk appetite, because it's pretty high risk. I mean, just the name suggests it. But
you've got a specific example where you helped a client do a no money down. Like, take us through that example.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've got several examples, but the one in the ebook goes like this. So there's a freehold office building in the Metro Sydney market. And the owner, the previous owner of the building has owned it for probably 20 years or so. And he's developed a really close relationship with the existing tenants. And he's a nice guy. He doesn't want to upset the tenant. So he's never really increased the rent much. So it comes to a point where he has to sell the property. And because he's never really increased the rent, the tenants in that building are paying probably 50%, 50, below market rent.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And the guy didn't really care because he's owned the property for so long. It's already paid off. It's giving him good cash flow. He just didn't want the stress of, upsetting the tenant and replacing tenants. Like, he's just one of those landlords where those best landlords that you can think of. Like, he's just one of those guys. So anyway, he had to sell the building, and the building's worth $9 million, and based on the rental income. Okay, so we found this deal, introduced a buyer, and basically what we negotiated was that we'll pay you $9 million for it. However, we want a 6 months delayed settlement. And during that 6 months, we want early access to speak with the existing tenants with the objective of renegotiating new leases with the existing tenant. So there's half a dozen tenants in that building. We went back and forth a little bit in the negotiations, but eventually that's what we agreed to: $9 million, 6 months delayed settlement, 5% deposit on exchange, and early access to sign up new leases. So as soon as the contract got exchanged, we started contacting the existing tenants because we've got permission to do so. So 5 out of the 6 were able to renegotiate the rents to market rent. So we took it from $250 per square meter, which was what they were paying, up to on average $480 per square meter.
Yeah, wow.
So the last tenant, the sixth tenant, couldn't afford it, so they decided to move out, and that's fine because we eventually replaced them anyway. So the negotiations part took about 6 weeks. So we did negotiations with 5 out of 6 tenants. We signed up new leases with all 5 of these tenants, and then all these 5 leases were at the market rent of $480 per square meter, the blended rate of $480 per square meter. We took the new leases to the bank, and we ordered a valuation based on the new leases. So based on the new leases, the valuation came in at 16.1.
I was going to say about 16, right?
Yeah, exactly. At 16.1 million. So we applied for a bank loan at, I think it was 60% LVR, which was enough to pay the vendor the $9 million they want, and the stamp duty and the purchasing costs. And so the buyer settled on a property with no money down using that tactic. And it's giving him positive cash flow.
Yeah. Now, the risk, obviously, if we don't renegotiate and we then get a 60% loan, is now due for is roughly $4 million, right? Or 3.6.
Well, that's right. That's right. So There are obviously risks involved. The risks are, what if the tenants say no, we can't negotiate a new lease, or we can't sign the leases in time for settlement.
Yep.
And, there's a bunch of other risks involved. But thankfully, we had a pretty good run with the tenants. They're all pretty reasonable. And I think also the goodwill that was built by the previous owner as well. So that was advantageous for us. But you're right. I mean, there are risks involved. And, if you don't have the risk appetite to take that risk, then it's probably not a deal for you.
Yes. But when we're that far below market value, and if you're well enough established as a person, then you can say, okay, I can eat that. Suddenly now there's a huge profit that's there in a short space of time.
Exactly. Imagine it's like you bought something for $9 million and you turn it into $16.1 million in a matter of 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's insane.